To you, the people of Flint, I say tonight, as I have before, I am sorry and I will fix it. No citizen of this great state should endure this kind of catastrophe. Government failed you, federal, state, and local leaders, by breaking the trust you placed in us.
Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan remarking on the lead contamination in the city of Flint's water supply just moments ago during his annual State of the State address. Snyder announcing he will release his emails on the matter from 2014 and 2015. Said he's requesting from the state legislature $28 million more in assistance for the city. This as anger over his leadership on the public health crisis has reached a boiling point. Snyder acknowledged in an interview with the National Journal that he's lost the public's trust and conceded his administration's response to the matter has been akin to the response to Hurricane Katrina. It's a disaster, Snyder admitted. It's clearly a negative on what we've accomplished since I've been governor. My next guest thinks Snyder should be in jail for his role in the crisis. Filmmaker and son of Flint, Michael Moore, will join me next. President Obama met with the mayors of Flint, Michigan at the White House today as the White House widened its response to the lead contamination in the city's water supply. The administration naming an official from the Department of Health and Human Services to coordinate federal efforts to help Flint deal with the crisis. Dr. Nicole Lurie will travel there tomorrow. As for President Obama, who's expected to attend the Detroit Auto Show tomorrow, the White House says there are no plans for him to travel to Flint. The president has already declared a federal emergency in Flint, which allows for up to $5 million in aid. Mr. Obama, however, has denied a federal disaster declaration, which would free up more money. The head of FEMA, Craig Fugate, noting that Flint's water contamination does not meet the legal definition of a major disaster under federal law. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder announcing at his State of the State address tonight, just an hour ago, he will appeal that decision. In the meantime, the two leading researchers on this water crisis who were sounding the alarm for months say they believe a Legionnaire's disease outbreak in the area, which sickened over 80 people and killed 10, is related to the city's water contamination crisis. This as NBC News reports that emails made public through records requests show that officials from the Federal Environmental Protection Agency knew as far back as February 2015 that Flint residents may be drinking water with high levels of lead. When NBC News contacted the EPA today, the federal agency admitted authorities had not moved quickly enough.
In April 2014, Flint switched from Detroit's water supply to save money. Immediately, there were complaints about its taste and smell. In February 2015, the first test showed elevated lead levels. Officials insisted the water was safe. But that June, an EPA official wrote a report warning that the lack of any treatment for lead is of serious concern. Officials discussed those concerns but took no action, while children and others continued drinking the water. In September 2015, independent researchers discovered alarming levels of lead in children's blood. 6 days later, the governor publicly acknowledged the problem. It wasn't until this month, nearly 2 years later, that the governor declared a state of emergency and asked for federal help.
Just moments ago in his State of the State address, Governor Snyder called for accountability on the matter.
For those whose mistakes contributed to this disaster, we are fully cooperating with investigations and will hold those individuals accountable. And let me be perfectly clear to all of state government. In situations like this, they must come to my desk immediately, no delays, no excuses, period.
Joining me now, a man who's called for Governor Snyder's arrest, filmmaker and son of Flint, Michael Moore. It is a great pleasure to have you here. I wish it was under better circumstances for your hometown.
Well, thanks for having me on here, Chris. And the governor, just now listening to that, he's appealing. He wants it declared a disaster area, and it should be. And who should know better than this governor, because he created the disaster. He admitted today, I said on Saturday, I said this is his Katrina, but actually that I was wrong in saying that, and today he admitted it is his Katrina, but Bush didn't create the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, there was, in the sense of Katrina, there was an actual storm that was mismanaged. There was no storm that hit.
There was no storm here. This was clean water we were drinking since I was the age of 10 in Flint. We were drinking this water in Genesee County. It came from Lake Huron. I just want to point out, when they say Detroit water, we were on the Detroit water. That's just because it's filtered through the plant in Detroit.
Right. It was a Detroit water system, but it's coming from the lake.
It comes from a glacial lake.
Right.
That's been there since the Ice Age. It was created during the Ice Age 10,000 years ago. It's a pure body of water. It's the third largest body of fresh water in the world. That's what we have access to in Michigan. The fact that the irony, irony isn't even the right word. It would be happening to us in Michigan is just it's so outrageous. And the thing is that the governor knew about this. The governor, his office, his people, his so-called environmental office, all packed with cronies, not real scientists or real environmentalists. They did this to the people of Flint, and I have been calling for Attorney General Lynch to investigate, arrest, prosecute him for a crime that was committed, a crime of both fraud, of covering up, and of polluting the water. You got to understand this. People of Flint were drinking this clean water from Lake Huron. He wanted to save money. He removed the mayor and the city council because the town had gone bankrupt. And
he did this to a bunch of municipalities throughout Michigan using this very controversial emergency manager law.
And you guys here at MSNBC, and especially Rachel.
Yep.
Rachel has covered this so-called emergency manager thing from the beginning. She's covered this story from the beginning. She could literally get elected to anything in Flint right now because people are so grateful because nobody in the national media was covering this in the way that you guys have covered this. So now here we're at this impasse. He sent in the National Guard last Wednesday. We've heard that on the news. But I was there in Flint this week. He sent 7 National Guard, 7. And they were all from Flint. He just activated 7 people from Flint
to hand out water bottles.
7 people who are already poisoned because they've been drinking the water for the last 2 years in Flint, to hand out bottles of water to their fellow poisoned citizens. There's been no big movement to do anything about this. They've had a few state police handing out these bottles. This is all PR. The speech tonight he gave was PR, and President Obama, I just don't know what I could do to convince him. He's going to be walking through the Detroit Auto Show tomorrow, looking at all the bright, shiny cars, all the futuristic cars that the automakers are planning to put out there in the next few years. And we're like a 10-minute helicopter ride from Detroit. You know, if he would just come to Flint, you know, don't fly into Detroit and fly out of Detroit and over and have that George Bush moment of looking out the window at Flint. We need his presence there, not just his doctor that he's sending, and we're grateful for that from the Health and Human Services Department, but we need his active presence, and they need to declare it a disaster area.
Flint has been a sort of afterthought in a lot of ways for a lot of people for a long time in the sort of process of deindustrialization. It's been hit by a million different troubles and problems visited upon it since the car jobs left. It was striking to me, Marco Rubio was asked on the campaign trail about this issue, which is now, you know, it's on the nightly news. It's no longer like a niche, like it's not, you know, everyone's writing about this. It's on the front page of the New York Times. Here was Marco Rubio responding. I want you to take a listen.
Okay.
Well, look, I'm not. That's not an issue that right now we've been focused on. It's for me to give you a deeply detailed answer on what the right approach should be on it, other than to tell you that, in general, I believe that the federal government role in some of these things are largely limited unless involves a federal jurisdictional issue. So I'd love to give you a better answer on it. It's just not an issue we've been, quite frankly, fully briefed or apprised of in terms of the role the governor's played and the state has played in Michigan on these sorts of issues.
Let me fully brief Marco Rubio about Flint. This is the town where the UAW was born. The great sit-down strike of 1936, 80 years ago, created, according to historians, the middle class was created in Flint, Michigan, because my uncle and others who were in that strike beat General Motors and created a middle class that didn't exist before Flint. This was our gift to the world, that working people could actually own a home, send the kids to college, have a car, get a vacation, see a doctor. All these ideas came from that strike in 1936. And the city built General Motors into the world's largest and richest corporation. In return for that, GM, beginning about 30-some years ago, started moving jobs out of Flint and moving them elsewhere, mostly to third world countries, but also to non-union states down south. And in doing so, wrecked the lives and the livelihoods of the people who built that corporation. And that was the first blow. And it's been one blow after another, decade after decade now. Wall Street came in and did their job on Flint. The government has done it. And now it's like it was 200,000 people there before I made Roger and Me. Now there's 100,000 left. 100,000 people got out.
And 8,000 children under 6 who have lead poisoning because their own government poisoned their water supply.
And can I just say, when we say that number, 8,000 under 6, the total number of kids under 6 in Flint is 8,000.
Right. All the kids.
All the kids have been poisoned by this governor.
Listen, this has become a campaign issue as well on the other side. Democratic primary is very contested. I want to ask you a question about that primary if you're willing to stick around.
Sure, yeah.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Michael Moore. I'm back with Michael Moore. So you're a longtime supporter of single payer. In fact, you made a movie about it called Sicko, which is a great film. And single payer, somewhat improbably, I think, has become the sort of one of the central axis points in this primary fight between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Are you going to make an endorsement? Is there a candidate you're supporting in this?
Well, I haven't said anything publicly yet because I haven't been on TV till right now. But let me say this. I flew to Burlington, Vermont in 1990, the year after I made Roger and Me. Bernie asked me to come up there, and I endorsed him and did a big rally for him in Burlington when he first ran for Congress. And so I'm probably the first endorser of Bernie and have endorsed him all these years. Having said that, while I have obviously many disagreements with Hillary about her vote on the war and her relationship with Wall Street, whatever, I also, in my first book back in 1996, I wrote a chapter called My Forbidden Love for Hillary. And I've really...
I remember that chapter, actually.
I've always really liked her. And not just in a,
Right.
Yeah.
In a forbidden way.
In a forbidden way, but also...
Fully.
Yes, and I have this... I've thought earlier this year, I thought if she actually is the nominee, I mean, I think whoever is the Democratic nominee is going to win, and that's why people should vote for who they think the best person is.
So you don't buy the, Bernie Sanders will be a Goldwater-esque electoral disaster for the Democrats?
Oh, no, the opposite, actually. I think you could make the case, look at the polls, that actually Bernie has a better chance of beating Trump than Hillary does. I personally believe that. But I also think that whoever has that D by their name is going to be the next president unless people don't come out to vote.
Right.
And so you need the Democrat on the ballot to be the one who's going to inspire people to get out, really inspire people. And I think the problem for Trump is the math. Not just the fact that he can't do math, but the fact, and by the way, that endorsement from Sarah Palin, I really thought I had turned on Comedy Central and was looking at Daryl Hammond and Tina Fey in an old sketch. But that was
it's really something.
That was beautiful, and actually what she was wearing, I have one of those at home, but I don't go out in public in it. But anyways, listen, Trump, 81% of the eligible voters in this country are either female, people of color, or young adults between the ages of 18 and 35. That's 81% of America. Right. He has essentially upset and offended all three of those groups.
And yet at the same time, I remember your book, Downsize This, and I remember reading it, and the last chapter has you going to talk to the Michigan militia. And basically, you make this argument in that, look, these people who are in our politics reactionaries are basically part of this sort of disaffected white working class that's been hammered by deindustrialization, et cetera. And in some ways, you see a bit of that in the Trump phenomenon, right?
Yes, and I think Sanders is right to try and appeal to some of those disaffected, lost souls. But remember, the angry white guy over the age of 35 only makes up 19% of the population. So Trump can't get to the White House with that. And I think, listen, I decided by the end of this week, I'm in the middle of writing something right now in terms of who I'm going to...
So you're not going to make news here?
Is there another gift I can give you? Obviously, my politics line up very closely with Bernie's. We have a historic moment where we can elect the first woman president of the United States, and I got invited to the White House by the Clintons back in the day. And they were really nice to me, and they I got to eat what I wanted to eat, and it was all very
There's
friendly.
a million lefties tearing their hair out right now as you
it was
say
really,
that.
you know, we were going through the reception line, and then Bill goes, I'm your number one fan. I'm your number one. And she grabbed his hand, and she goes, no, I'm your number one fan. They're great.
Good politicians. Okay, there's
politics, yes.
So you're gonna write an endorsement that will be coming out this week or soon.
Yes.
So okay.
Yes, I am.
One more thing. Oscars this year, not a single African-American nominee. There are calls for a boycott. You've been very vocal about the Academy and its problems. I want to ask you what you think of that. If you will stick around one more break, will you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right.
Maybe I'll finish my endorsement during the break.
Okay. Stick around. Michael Moore has a new documentary coming out nationwide on February 12th called Where to Invade Next. In it, he visits countries like Italy and Iceland to steal their good ideas and bring them back to this country as examples for the U.S. to learn from. Ideals like places like schools, workplaces, hospitals, and even prisons. For example, here's some of what he found out while visiting a prison in Norway.
How many times have you been beaten up here by other prisoners?
No, never.
How many times have you been raped in the shower?
Never. This is not going to happen because you got your own shower.
I'm gonna have exam after summer, so I want to work with community problems and things like that, maybe politics later on, so.
That's not a bad idea. Go to prison first, then become a politician.
Michael Moore's previous films like Bowling for Columbine, which looks at gun safety, Capitalism, a Love Story, which focuses on economic inequality, and Sicko, which examines our healthcare system. All are topics that have been front and center in this Democratic race. Still with me, Academy Award winner Michael Moore. So there was this hashtag Oscars So White. There was this a real disgust, I think, frankly, of the fact these nominations came out. There's not a single African American. This has been a persistent issue in the Academy. Jada Pinkett called for a boycott. Spike Lee said he was going to join her. And you tweeted, I think, that you're also going to boycott.
Yeah, I said I stand with Spike and Jada. This is wrong. Not just in terms of the Oscars, but really it's the industry. I mean, I just served a term recently on the Board of Governors a couple years ago at the Oscars and representing the documentary branch. And I know that amongst the Board of Governors and amongst the people that run the Academy, they are absolutely disgusted with this all-white nature that keeps happening every year. I think they're going to fix it. I think I and others who symbolically stand with Spike and Jada will help this along. But it's the industry, Chris. It's an industry that's it's an industry that's so white and so male. And
the Academy too. I mean, demographically is incredible. Like the actual voters,
because they work in this industry. I mean, I can go to L.A. for 2 or 3 days. Let's say if I got to take some meetings for my next movie or whatever, and
there's something so hilarious in Congress about hearing Michael Moore utter the phrase "take some meetings."
That should be filmed, actually. That is a documentary I should do, just like going around Hollywood. But I literally can go there. They put me in a West Hollywood hotel. I can go to a meeting in Century City, a meeting in Burbank, a meeting in Santa Monica. 3 days later, I've not encountered a single African American in any position of any decision-making power or authority. It is stunning how segregated the town is, how the industry is. It's the General Motors of that town.
Right.
Yet you couldn't go to General Motors in Detroit and for 3 days at GM not encounter a black American who has some power there. So it's a real problem that's got to get corrected within the industry itself. And as Spike said today, there needs to be real affirmative action with this, and with race, with gender. I ended up actually with this film that's coming out right now. 11 of my people who have a producer title on it, of the 11, 8 are women. That's a very rare thing. It's rare. I've never had that many actually been able to. You've got to really work at it if you want to have that sort of diversity in your crew.
It's called Where to Invade Next. I can't wait to watch it.
Where to Invade Next, yes.
Michael Moore, what a great pleasure. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, geez, I'm so
around so long.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, and thank Rachel wherever she is.
Just down the hall.
She's already been elected to something in Flint. So,
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. More to come.